The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heartthrob in my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too feeble and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
Earnestly Podcast coming to you live on what today's day is? February 25th, 2025. Late night. Well, I guess late night. It depends what your perspective is, of course. Join here, doing the NBA pod here. Join here, of course, NBA writer, author, you name it. Friend of the pod, Greg Hrinya, Gee Hrinya on Twitter, or X, when I call it. What's up, buddy? Oh, wait. My bad. I didn't unmute you. I apologize. You can talk now. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I did, bud.
I've got the go ahead. Doing well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, we got a lot to talk about the NBA. A lot going on. I always say we did last week a couple weeks ago. Right on the day of the trend. I think literally minutes after the deadline ended, and then we had the All-Star break. And I always say that after the All-Star break is what I call the pennant time, using a baseball term, to describe the final countdown, the final stretch for the NBA season, which we are there now. So we got a lot of good topics to talk about here today on the podcast. First off, and I want to try to get this done, as we are right now live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on as well as Twitter, as well X. I'm still calling it Twitter. What do you call it, Greg? You call it Twitter still, or what?
I still call it Twitter. I've never called it X. I don't even type X into my browser if I'm on my computer. I'll still type Twitter and then it'll right to X.
Yeah. Like I said, we are doing this live as well too. If you guys want to chat and join the chat room, of course, while we're doing this and comment on the show, we'll obviously highlight some of your comments, that, as long as they're appropriate, of course, guys. But first things first, the Lakers, they are on fire. And to be honest with you, people assume, well, it's because of Doncic and the acquisition, though. But honestly, they've been on a roll since before that trade happened. And now, all of a sudden, you look at the lay of the land of the Western Conference. I think right now they're number 4 in the conference currently, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're 4, but I mean they're 1 game back of 2. But then,
right.
In the Western Conference, you win a game or you win 2 games, you lose 2 games, you could move a couple spots.
I think we all agree OKC's going to be the number 1 seed. I think right now, 6 up right now, or 5 up, maybe, barring a collapse. But the Lakers right now are on a roll. And look, I'll be honest with you, I was one of those folks that was skeptical of that trade, more so, the short term. Like when I saw the trade of Luka for AD, my thought was, okay, fine, this is a move that's going to be made for the long term for the Lakers. They're going to exit LeBron stage left at some point, and they got the generational star for the next 10 years. But you watch this team right now, they haven't stopped. Even after the trade, they're still on a roll. They're one of the hottest teams in the league right now. They're number 4 in the West, number 2, game back behind number 2 seed right now. All of a sudden, you look at the Western Conference. Like, I know OKC number 1 in the Western Conference, but they're still a young team. Denver obviously is Denver. You gotta stay healthy. Are the Lakers actually a title finals contender now?
I would say no, just because I don't know that they have the size for it. I mean, since we talked last, I mean, the Mark Williams trade hadn't been voided. So, I mean, I think that the idea was that would have given a lob threat for Doncic, that would have given them the big man in the paint. And not to disparage Jackson Hayes, but I mean, I think that that's still going to be a void for them going forward. Now, what we saw on Saturday night was they were able, I mean, they limited Jokic. I mean, 7 shots, he's 2 for 7. He still had a triple-double, but I mean, he just, it's late in the 4th quarter and he basically couldn't get anything off. So, I mean, even without that typical size in a Mark Williams or an AD or, the big that you would have wanted to see them have,
Yeah.
Doncic with LeBron, they were still able to defend Denver really quite well. I don't know that I would bet on that though in a 4-game series, in a
7-game series,
best of
best of
7,
7, right?
first to 4 wins.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily bank on that, but it's funny. Earlier in the day, I'm going through all the teams in the West, and I'm like, I could make an argument against all of them. I mean, like it's not so much an argument for them, but I'm going down the list, and I'm like, right now, maybe Denver's the best team. And I know that the recency bias will say, oh, the Lakers just smacked them on Saturday, so I mean, does that make them a contender? I still just think that they're probably still a little ways away in the sense that they don't have like a complete roster. The fact that they don't have that big man in there, I don't know how much you'll be able to guard a guy like Jokic with Dorian Finney-Smith and Jared Vanderbilt in a 4-game, in a best of 7 series.
It's okay.
It's almost 10 o'clock here, so it's getting me my bedtime. So
yeah, mine too. Although, are you staying awake to watch the Lakers game tonight? Are you staying awake?
Yeah, I'm gonna watch as much of it as I can. So,
which means still second quarter and go to bed.
No, I mean I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try and watch the whole thing. There's a good chance that I fall asleep at halftime.
So like you have the same feeling I do. Like I don't want to discredit the Lakers, and I want the Laker fans to get all mad at me, and all of a sudden like, oh, you don't believe in us now, this kind of thing. Look, this is a very good team. The trade so far is working out. Luka hasn't even got his legs on him yet. He's only now starting to get back. Remember, he was out for 2 months with an injury. He just got back in the lineup like literally a week and a half ago. So we're only starting to see him now. He played his best game so far in the uniform on Sunday or Saturday rather against Denver. And I think also the reason why people are still people believe that maybe there's a chance they can go to the finals or they're at least a contender is that you just mentioned it. The Western Conference does feel a little wide open right now. Like, yes, OKC is really good. We agree. Best team right now so far in the Western Conference, probably in the league. But they're still very young, and they still got to prove it. Last night's game against Minnesota, I know they won the first one of the back-to-back, but last night's game, you blew a 25-point lead at home. I mean, look, I don't want to like pick and prod little things here and there, but that's a little concerning there. Denver, of course, you have Jokic, and he's obviously best player in the league right now, and probably by far. But they have guys, the guys around him who can't stay healthy. Jamal Murray can't stay healthy. Can those guys, can Michael Porter Jr. come through? Aaron Gordon could be consistent. A lot of concerns there. Memphis still got to prove it. Look at the Western Conference. It's not far fetched that if LeBron and Luka can get this thing going by April. I mean, LeBron he's 40 years old, but let's be real. This dude is still kicking ass right now, even at 40 years old. It is not far-fetched, I guess, looking at the variables around the conference that this team could at least take a shot at the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, and then you keep going on down the list. You have Houston at 5, and I mean,
and they're young.
They're young. I don't take them seriously. I don't think they have enough shooting. I think that if they took themselves seriously, they would have made a move at the deadline. But they were basically like, we want to see what we need. Basically, we want to see where this takes us, and then we'll assess in the offseason, and then they'll probably look to make some moves. But yeah, I mean, going back to the last conversation that we had on the last podcast, like I was really disappointed in Oklahoma City with what they did at the deadline or the lack of what they did. I thought that was an opportunity for them with all the assets that they have to go out and add some shooting around the perimeter. And I mean, the one thing that would scare me about them is that like I feel like in a long series where teams are giving you the best defensive effort every night, is that the kind of thing that could be their downfall? I mean, like Shea is not like your prototypical 3-point shooter. Jalen Williams is not a prototypical 3-point shooter. I mean, I know Chet is solid from 3, but I mean, still, I don't know that you're confusing him with like Kyle Korver in his prime or anything like that.
Yeah,
so,
true.
So I mean, like you look at their roster, it's Aaron Wiggins, it's Isaiah Joe. Like, are those guys going to come through in the playoffs? We'll find out. But I mean, I don't see a tremendous amount of shooting on their roster. I mean, look, they're great. I'm just looking to nitpick a little bit, like, where could I see some holes in all these teams that could doom them possibly in a long series, in the semifinals and the Western Conference Finals, so on and so forth. So they're still, I don't want to say they're not battle tested, but I mean, they're young. So, I mean, they were in the playoffs last year, but I mean, they still have to prove themselves. I mean, we've had that conversation all year about Cleveland. I mean, it's probably the same thing for Oklahoma City. Like until they show they can do it in the playoffs, we're going to wonder. So, that does leave an opening for the Lakers, you think. But I mean,
Right.
my knock would be I just don't know that they have enough skilled size. And in a long series, I feel like if they go up against Denver, they're going to find a way to not have a repeat of what happened on Saturday night. Like, I don't know that you can do that 4 times. Like, can you win 4 games against Denver in 7?
Yeah.
Like shutting down Jokic the way they did on Saturday. My guess would be like if they played again 2 days later, like they would in the playoffs, he's going to wind up having like 24 shots and scoring like 38 points or something like that.
Right. Another team that's actually got really hot also since the trade deadline as well. The Golden State Warriors, since the Jimmy Butler trade, I believe they're 6-1 since that trade. Jimmy Butler so far looks great. Looks like a new man. Obviously, you and I both were critical of the move. Mainly, in my case, and I'm sure you're the same boat as you are as I was. The long-term ramifications of that move, having to extend that guy to paying him $50+ million a year for another 2 years on top of that. But so far, so good for Golden State. Are they a threat in the West?
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier too, and I thought to myself, like, could they wind up in the Western Conference Finals just because they got good matchups and so on and so forth? Like maybe, like I don't know that I can rule that out, but I would be shocked if they wound up going to the finals or were like a contender for the finals. Yeah. I mean, you go up and down their roster, and I mean, Jimmy's great. He's playing great. He's motivated, and that's all well and good. He's a great playoff performer. But like, I really don't see. Speaking of Oklahoma City not having enough perimeter shooting, like it's weird saying that the Warriors don't have enough shooting, but like, I don't know. You have Curry, obviously, who's the best to ever do it. But like Pajemski is a below average 3-point shooter. Draymond Green's not a 3-point shooter. Jimmy Butler's not a 3-point shooter. Depending on how you fill out the lineup, if you're playing a big or I know that guy Quentin Post has been a good 3-point shooter, but like he's been in the league for 10 minutes. I mean, like, is that a guy that you're going to rely on in the playoffs? I don't know. So I mean, like they're putting a lot of pressure on Curry to be really, really good at his age for an extended period of time for, a month and a half, basically, if everything goes to plan for them. And that's no knock on Butler. He's been great since he got there. But I mean, it is still a small sample size. And I still wonder if they have enough shooting. And that's why, like, when I was going through all these teams, I'm like, it's still landing me on Denver just because they've got the best player by a wide margin.
Yeah.
And a really good starting lineup, and my knock on them all year was like, oh, they don't have the depth. But like, when you're in the playoffs and you're playing 7 or 8 guys, does the depth matter as much? Can you get away with Westbrook and Strother and another guy? So Christian Brown, I guess, Christian Brown and Westbrook will probably be tag teaming, going in and out, with each other. So
yeah.
So does the lack of depth hurt them that much in a long series? And to your point, like they've got to stay healthy. Aaron Gordon missed a ton of time. Michael Porter Jr. is always a question mark. Jamal Murray is always a question mark. So I feel like the only guy you feel pretty safe about is Jokic, but that might be all you need. So I mean,
Denver really they won 9 last 10 games. Now, granted, they are 8.5 back. By the way, the 8.5 back in the Western Conference leader, Oklahoma City Thunder, which they're not gonna catch them at this point. Locking at 2 speed at this point is between the battle for 2 between them and Memphis and in LA, of course, is only 2.5 back. But yeah, I agree with you there. Like I think Golden State's in the same spot as LA. Like this is a lower bracket, more so the fact that okay, if they're healthy and you got a break or 2 in the right matchup, maybe you can find yourself in the second round playoffs, maybe in the conference finals, depending on how things break. But again, I just don't. Everything always starts nice. Everything's always great when it first starts out, and then you get to the the middle of the year or the middle of the process, and all of a sudden things start breaking down. I just don't think Jimmy Butler long term for Golden State is the right fit. Now, if this is a move to make another move going forward, sign me up. If this is a move to get another star there or another complementary piece alongside Curry and Butler and Draymond, have at it. But is this team right now constructed good enough to win the West? Hell no. I still stand by that. 10 toes on that one.
Yeah, likewise. And again, for me, it's just the shooting. It's Curry's age, the amount of pressure that you're going to put on him to hit a ridiculous amount of shots. And you're right, Butler's been great so far, but it's like for a 5-year stretch with Kyrie Irving, it's like you'd always look at him and be like, oh, it's a great start. Everything looks great with his new team. And then, he's been great in Dallas. But I mean, it's like when it was Boston, when it was with the Nets, it's like the bloom came off the rose relatively quickly. So it'll be interesting to see if Butler can continue showing up to work every day. That was a problem with Miami. I just felt like he was amazing in the playoffs, but during the regular season, you didn't necessarily know how often he was going to be available. And I think that's also one of the criticisms you heard as he was going out of town. I think it was Tim Hardaway Sr. Said that on a podcast recently that like Jimmy would just be like taking games off and that he wasn't really hurt. And
he called him. I think he called him a crybaby, if I'm mistaken.
Yeah. I mean,
he has some choice words about Jay Butler on that.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a very outspoken guy anyway. So I mean, he could also be over dramatizing that a bit. But I mean, let's face it. Like for me, Jimmy Butler didn't play often enough, which is why Miami was always in the situation that they were in, where like they were, except for a year here, a year there, like they've been like a play-in team to get into the playoffs for the last few years, and it's because it's hard to be like a 500 team, then have to run a gauntlet to like when they went to the finals, it's like they literally had to play the next best team every round. And it's like at some point that's going to catch up to you. And they made it to the finals, but I don't know how often you can count on like being a low seed and making a run like that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you there. All right, let's talk 76ers. What a disaster. They have lost 8 in a row, lost 9 last 10. They're, I thought with all the struggles still, this year that they will still make a run for at least a play-in like last year. Not so sure anymore. To be honest with you. Now, they are 2.5 back right now of the 10th-seeded Bulls for the 10th spot in the East. But we're hearing rumblings now that the Sixers are reevaluating the situation with Joel Embiid as to whether or not he'll come back this year. Now, he has played games recently, and when he has played, he has played phenomenal. For the record, it's not like he's not playing well. When he plays the games, he's been top 5 player in the league, top 10 player in the league, when they call it. But it's when he's there. He doesn't play back-to-backs. He's barely been in the line this year. Paul George it's called what it is. That's been a failure so far. The Paul George thing's been a failure so far. Tyrese Maxey, young player, great talent, but you can't carry the load. And yet, if you're Philly, my thing is, if you're reevaluating what you can't waste any more years. This is my assessment. Joel Embiid is right now at this point year to year, and not even year to year. He could be game to game or week to week, when I call it, because the way he plays, the way his body's breaking down right now, and he's at 30 years old. It was right now at that point where, for a guy his size, especially too, that's where that's the tipping point of where either he's going to either maintain or he's going to fall off. They can't afford him a wasted years, and plus that contract he has now, he has 2 more years on the contract. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the number is like $59 million 1 year and then $60+ million another year. You can't waste any years on this one. You got to go all in and just continue to push. There's no move you can make. I mean, unless you're trading Embiid for assets, and you said and you're giving up the whole thing, you got to go all in. I don't think they can afford to waste time with Embiid. I think they got to try to get play in if they can.
My take on it is that I think that they are embracing the tank at this point. I don't see Embiid playing another game this season. I think they're going to shut him down while they try and figure out what to do. Even if they make the playoffs, they're going to get smoked by the Cavs in the first round. That's not a good matchup for them, just from a shooting standpoint. I've watched a lot of Philly this year. Like the last couple games that they've played, like I watched the Bulls game they played last night because I was intrigued by their whole situation, and also like that was like a possible like game for the 10 seed. And the fact that they were down by 50 at one point in that game, like to me, that's a team that is packed up, gone home. We'll get back to Embiid, but like Paul George, to say that he's been uninspiring is an understatement. I mean, his effort level has been atrocious, in my opinion. He's getting blown by guys like Keon Johnson, in the Nets game a couple of games ago. Last night, Modest Buzelis, and again, no knock on those guys, but like he's supposed to be one of like the top defenders in the league. And I know that the criticism or the explanation, let's put it this way, of why George was struggling was, he's got the finger injury. It's affecting his shot, and it's like,
always
okay,
something.
Yes, well, that, and also that's fine, but that's not affecting his effort level on defense. You know, his finger doesn't stop him from guarding a guy. So I mean, the fact that he's getting blown by, he's not taking that many shots. To me, he looks like a guy who's totally checked out on this season. And given the fact that their pick is top 6 protected, and Embiid's injury situation, they're probably looking at it like, even if we get in the playoffs, where are we going? The goal, I mean, if they could somehow, and look, their picks top 6 protected. If they finish with the 5th or 6th worst record, I mean, that only gives them a 50% shot basically of keeping their pick. So it's no guarantee that if they only win 3 or 4 games the entire rest of the season, that they're even going to get to keep their pick. To your question about whether or not they can afford to waste time, Embiid, the last couple of games, looked like he could barely move up and down the floor. So I mean, like, when he's healthy, and I was watching highlights of him from a game, I guess it was last year, and it's just night and day. And I mean, I follow one of the writers there pretty regularly, Kyle Newbeck, of All Philly Sports, and I mean, he wrote a story basically explaining all the different options that, because it's exploratory at this point. Again, it's not like there's an ACL that they have to repair. Like, they really don't know what they need to do to get the swelling to go down. And like, Embiid did all these, taking supplements and vitamins and working on his diet and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, that's all well and good. But that's stuff that should have happened 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the damage to his knees has been done by now. So, I mean, if he loses 15 pounds, that's nice, but it's like his knees are already shot. So, I mean, that's something that he should have embraced a long time ago, not necessarily now. So, I mean, to your point about being game to game and all that, I'd be surprised if he played again this year for multiple reasons. One, his health, he's not moving well. And two, they look like a team that's ready to pack it in. I mean, they showed Nick Nurse on the sideline yesterday. I mean, he looked like he was going to start crying because, I mean, I don't think that he expected them to give the kind of effort that they did last night, where it's like, look, the Bulls had lost 6 straight games themselves, one of the worst offensive teams in the league, and they had 75 points at halftime. So, I mean, to me, that looks like a team that is throwing in the towel. I mean, they do have a soft schedule the rest of the way. I think it's like 27th in the league as far as strength of schedule. So, I mean, like, they are going to have a lot of games against the Wizards and Hornets closing it out. But, I mean, is that something they even want at this point? I don't know.
Is there, and look, given the risk, obviously there's risk with this, but is there a potential market for Embiid if the team, not say they put him on a train block, but let's say get little feelers? Is there a market for him though? Because I mean, we acknowledge that he's obviously, when healthy, still a top 10 guy in the league. We acknowledge that. And we got to figure at least 1 or 2 teams are going to look at, okay, if we get him healthy at the right time, this could be the piece over top. Is there a market for Embiid? If so?
I would say no, only because I feel like if you're a GM and you make that trade, if it doesn't work out, you're going to get fired. So it's a lot safer to not make that move, given his
that's a good point
injury questions. So like if you're, I was listening to Brian Windhorst podcast a few weeks ago about how the Orlando Magic like never make calls. Like they'll take calls, but they're not really exploring the trade market. Like when people were asking why they didn't do anything at the deadline, like I'm just thinking like, okay, if they said, let's go out and get Embiid. Let's throw a couple first-round picks, bring him to Orlando. Like, if that doesn't work, Jeff Weltman's getting fired. So, I mean, like,
exactly.
That's the downside of a move like that. Do you keep your powder dry for all this time to then go after a guy who's 31, 32 years old and has chronic knee problems? I feel like it's, especially in this, like, second apron, first apron market,
that's
where
the big
like,
one there.
Where like salaries really matter at this point. Can you afford to pay a guy $60 million and have him in street clothes every game? If he, again, to your point, if he's healthy, he's great, but I just don't know that he's ever going to be healthy again.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to gamble on that? I feel like if anything, GMs are going to become more conservative rather than more aggressive. Not just with him, just in general, given that you don't want to acquire a salary that you are then burdened with for several years.
Well, that's the thing too. I think that if anything, the salary is going to be what tells folks no, because I'm looking right now the exact number. I know it's close to the number here, but he's getting next year. Next year. 26. No, sorry, he has a wow. Jeez, Philly's fucked here. So in 26-27, if this is right, this is a cap hit. Sorry about that. This is wrong. It's a cap hit. Base salary. Okay, so he's getting $59 million in 26-27, 64 in 27-28, and then a player option for at 28-29 for $69 million, which of course, if the way he's going now, he's going to opt in that contract, buddy. Okay, he's opting in. So Philadelphia's going to be paying him close to $200 million the next 3 years for a de-escalating asset that's falling apart.
And it's not just that. It's not just that. It's Paul George too, because he's 35 years old. He's getting older, and then you watch him play, and it's like you're saddled with these two. It's not like they have one albatross on their books; they got two of them. So it's funny how Philadelphia would ride Tobias Harris for years, and then you look at him with Detroit, and it's like, oh, he's not a star, but he's like a really good role player, and like they're not even getting that from Paul George, who's making like superstar money.
Yeah.
So it's tough. The only thing that I will say that's good for them is that they do have Maxey, they do have Jared McCain. McCain, in all likelihood,
and they got solid pieces around that team. Also, what shocks about this, real quick, what shocks about this collapse is that even we knew Embiid would be an issue health-wise anyway. We knew this coming to the year. We knew PG to some degree may miss 20+ games, but their roster on paper we thought was good enough to keep them within the top 6 or 7 Eastern Conference. And the fact they're number 12 right now with that roster, and they have good players on the roster around those guys. That makes no sense. I mean, Daryl Morey I don't think Daryl Morey did a bad job with the roster, all considering, but things is falling apart.
Yeah, I haven't necessarily always been a big fan of Nick Nurse, and I think that the way the team played last night is probably not and look, it says a lot about the players going out and laying down like that, but like I also haven't seen anything from him pretty much since his time there that has really like inspired me. So I mean, but when I was watching that game yesterday, I'm like, look, even without Embiid, if you're starting Maxey, Quentin Grimes, who's solid, Yabusele, who's for all intents and purposes had a pretty good year, and Paul George and Kelly Oubre, like that's a game you would have thought that the Sixers would go out and win by 20 points, given that Chicago is, not
part too.
Like they had lost 6 games in a row and were playing without arguably their best player in Vucevic. So I mean, it wasn't like they were trotting out their full lineup either. No Dosunmu, no Vucevic. It was basically Kobe White and Buzelis and a couple other guys. So Kevin Huerter had 23 points. So I mean, it's like. They were pulling guys from everywhere to play that game, and to be up 50. I mean, that's pretty telling if you ask me.
Oh, I know they're lucky the Eagles won the Super Bowl because this had been a top story like months ago. Just saying, but yeah. The San Antonio Spurs, lots of clouds around their situation. First off, Victor Wembanyama out for the year with a blood clot in his shoulder. No word on when he's coming back. If what the prognosis on that is. Obviously, when I saw that news, number one, the first person that came to mind was Chris Bosh. And going through that saga, I mean, again, me living here in South Florida, being a diehard Miami Heat fan, and that whole saga for 2 years, obviously you think of blood clots, you think worst case scenario, the word thrombosis, I think what the word to use to describe his situation. When I saw that, I was like, oh, that is very serious. I guess the good news really is that it's in his shoulder. As opposed to his lung, which is, I mean, the location matters, I guess. See, Chris Bosh's situation was strange because the first he had 2 blood clots. The first time he had blood clots in 2015 was in his calf. He was out for the year. He came back for next year, played well actually, and then the same All-Star break 1 year later, they found more clots in his lung. So that's when they pulled the plug on Bosh for good. I heard this injury, this health issue with Wemby is very similar to Brandon Ingram when he had in his rookie year, or closest rookie year, or his first year in New Orleans. I can't remember exactly what it was.
I want to say it was 2015 or 16.
Yeah. Ingram came back for next year, made an All-Star team. So if if you were to use that as an example, Wemby should be okay. I mean, God willing, let's hope he's okay. Let's hope his health is okay first and foremost. But you have that situation with Wemby, and then of course Greg Popovich. Now he's been out most of the year with a health issue. He had a mild stroke beginning of the year. They announced officially a couple days ago he's not coming back to the team this year, and his future in general is very much in question. So the Spurs, who we thought had a very bright future going forward, we figure Pop come back some point. You get De'Aaron Fox in the trade deadline. Wemby's it's obviously a top player in the league now already, second year in, and all of a sudden things been questioned. Your thoughts on Spurs?
Yeah, I mean, as far as Wembanyama goes, I mean, you covered a lot of what I would have said. I'm not a doctor, so I mean, there's no way for me to know how serious it is. I mean, the examples that everyone's using are Brandon Ingram and Asar Thompson. Thompson had the blood clot issue last year, rookie with the Pistons, brother of Amen Thompson, and has played all year this year and doesn't seem to be showing any ill effects from it. But again, you mentioned Chris Bosh too, and it's the same kind of thing. So, I mean, I don't know that you ever know for certain. They say that they expect him to make a full recovery, be back next year, all that good stuff. But I mean, I don't know that you can really know that for certain.
Right.
But I mean, they've portrayed optimism, so I'll go with that. And if we're operating under that premise, I would say that it's probably not the worst thing in the world that they wind up in the lottery again. This is a very deep draft. They've got Atlanta's pick. They also have their own pick. So they've got two cracks at it of moving up and possibly getting a good pick in a draft where there's going to be 5 or 6 really can't miss type players, at least that's what all the draft experts say, and that it's a deep draft beyond that. So is it the worst thing in the world that you get Wemby back next year? You have 2 lottery picks to add to that. You have Fox, and you have a lot of assets that you could also move if you want to go for another guy. I mean, the fact that you have 2 lottery picks, Devin Vassell's really good, Stephon Castle's really good, both young. So I mean, if they wanted to swing for the fences, they could do that. If they want to just keep building this organically, I mean, they're going to get 2 really good players, you'd imagine, so they could do that. So, I mean, was them making the play-in and then, or not even the play-in, let's say they made a run, made the playoffs, and then got bounced in the first round, it might be better to have 2 cracks at, moving up and getting, a significantly
Really true.
better player. As far as Popovich goes, I don't necessarily know that he'll coach again. Just because I feel like it would be very easy for him to hand over the reins and then move into the front office and be an advisor or some sort of figure in that sense that's not nearly as taxing as the grind of coaching 82 games and then playoffs at his age. Now, granted, maybe he wants to coach again. I don't know that, but I mean, I feel like this is probably a natural way for him to ride off into the sunset and maybe do something like...
He's what, 72, 73?
I want to say he's 73.
I'll look up now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he is the president of the team. Oh, wow. He's 76.
Oh, wow. So I don't know where I got 73.
He's 76. Yeah. And by the time he goes to next season, he'll be pacing 77 years old.
Yeah.
Whew, that's wow. I mean, if I've had a guess, I would assume he's done.
He's accomplished everything that you could ever.
Of course, he's my goat. He's my goat personally. So
yeah, same. Because it's not just the accomplishments; it's also just watching them play. When you watch today's game, and it's just teams dribbling up and going right into 3-pointers. I guess I took for granted all the ball movement that they played, the style of basketball that they played when it was going on, not knowing that it would get to a point now where it's when you talk about ratings, it's it's been deemed a boring game mainly because you have all these teams. I mean, Boston tonight shot 51 threes, and it's
51 threes in that. Jeez.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what they always shoot. And Tatum was 3 for 12 from threes. I know he can shoot threes, but it's that's not the best shot available to him. And I mean, they still won. They're playing the Raptors. They're clearly a better team.
Right.
I mean, I just look at that and I'm like, Tatum doesn't need to be taking 12 threes a night because he can get to any spot on the floor that he wants.
Right.
And he's not really a great shooter. It's not like he's shooting 42% from three.
And I feel like that alone makes them beatable, actually. Because if you get them off that line, you can beat them.
Yeah, because you know that they're going to shoot that many threes a night. So, they're going to force their way into it. And to your point, if you start running them off the line, they're still going to keep hunting them. And I feel like that's a good way to take them out of their rhythm. But yeah, not that I want to get onto a tangent.
Celtics rant.
Yeah, get onto a thing about Boston, but just that 3-point barrage that you see from so many teams makes me really envy what the Spurs used to do, where all 5 guys on a lot of possessions would touch the ball because the ball was, being swung around the perimeter so much.
That 2013 team gave me nightmares. The finals, Danny Green and Boris Diaw, and with Duncan Ginobili, and you have Gary Neal coming off the bench, also hitting threes. Like, oh my god, I literally did detest Danny Green because he gave me nightmares at that series in 2013. We eventually won the series, but still, like, oh
yeah. But winning that finals against a team of that quality is certainly something that
to be proud of.
A good feather in your cap. So
yeah, absolutely. So when he gets back soon, I mean, look, do I want Pop to come back? Obviously, yes. But do I think if I put a percentage chance of him coming back to the NBA, I say 20%.
Yeah, that's probably, I'd say 1 in 4. So I'll say 25%.
There you go.
25, 50, 75. I would say 25%.
Yeah.
So.
There you go. All right, one more thing we got here. One more thing. So this is actually a topic that you and I actually sort of debated a couple weeks ago on text. You sent me a text after the podcast we did early in the month, and basically just straight up told me that your boy Erik Spoelstra is overrated, and you listed out reasons why. I can't remember what game was it that night that they played that they lost.
They were playing the Nets, and
it was a Nets game. 8 points in that fourth quarter.
8 points in the fourth quarter,
yeah.
And then within a week they had a game. I want to say it was against Oklahoma City, and obviously Oklahoma City is very good, but they scored 9 points in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
I'm like, 2 times in a week they can't crack 10 points in a fourth quarter.
And I said it's to say this for the next time on the podcast, and then like since then they've just can't see the closeout games. They had leads against Milwaukee a couple nights ago, lost. They had a lead against I believe Toronto, almost lost. Won the game, almost lost. A lead against OKC, you mentioned, yes. Dallas the very next night, lost. So I get very defensive about Erik Spoelstra because I'm a Spo guy and have been from day one. I was one of the first guys to defend him when firespo.com was a thing during the first LeBron year, the first Big 3 year. People want him gone, and I was like, no, you gotta stay the course of this guy. This guy's great, and so I'm a Spo guy through and through. But I will say the argument since our text from 3 weeks ago, has not looked. It looks pretty bad because he have been struggling post Jimmy Butler trade. What's your assessment on Erik Spoelstra? Why do you think he's overrated? Tell the folks here.
It's important to know that when I say he's overrated, it's not like I'm saying that he's like the 16th best coach or the 17th best coach in the league. I mean, he's still probably like 3 or 4, but I feel like he was underrated for so long that he got to a point where now he's probably overrated. It's like he's still an amazing coach, but I mean, like, and you're like, well, who would you take ahead of him? Like, well, I'd probably take Ty Lue ahead of him, and not just because they won a title, but like I look at what he's done for years with the Clippers with George and Kawhi constantly in and out of the lineup, and this year you really don't have Kawhi very often. You lose Paul George altogether. It's basically just James Harden and a bunch of guys.
Right.
And, they're still scrapping for, a strong spot there. And when I watch Oklahoma City, like, I did say earlier that, like, I could see them getting knocked off, the experience, the lack of shooting, but like they're probably the closest thing that I've seen from a ball movement perspective to the Spurs of, a decade ago, just in terms of the style they play. I know Shea will, go ISO a lot and he can get buckets in a variety of ways, but just the style that they play to me from a ball movement standpoint. And look, I give him credit too for developing all these guys. I feel like we take for granted that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is probably going to win MVP this year, that Jalen Williams is an all-star, that, all these guys are making contributions. Like we give Spo that same credit for Max Strus getting a contract with Cleveland and turning into a great player, and Duncan Robinson getting a contract Like, I feel like he deserves those same accolades. And just when I started looking through it.
No, I'm glad I mentioned that because this is something I've been using for years with Spoelstra. What I define, one of the things I define in greatness of a coach is developing guys and how those same assets are valued by other people outside the team. So going back to like 2015, 2016, after the LeBron era. So he brings in guys that were assets that were diminished assets. Luol Deng, for example. Luol Deng had 2 solid years in Miami. He goes to LA, gets a $74 million contract in 5 years, which at the time was a big deal before the big massive smoothing of the contract salary cap. A lot of guys, Hassan Whitesides, guys who were either got paid in Miami or outside of Miami getting paid more than they probably should. Gabe Vincent, another guy. You name it. You go down the list. Kendrick, not Kendrick Lamar, but Kendrick Nunn, another guy getting money in the Lakers. So Spoelstra has found a way to use G League guys or rookies or guys that were just left for dead. They come to Miami. They get involved in the culture. They're competitive here. The Heat are a playoff team every year, and then these guys go and make money elsewhere because we can't afford them. Max Strus. You mentioned Max Strus, same thing. So to me, that's why I always value Erik Spoelstra is where he is most valued. The fact that he knows how to take talent that otherwise teams wouldn't look at, make them bigger than probably they really are, better than they really are, and then you go elsewhere and get paid big bucks. That's how I've always looked at it. And it's not a new thing. It's something I've been looking at for at least 10 years.
Yeah, and that's not me saying that he's not a good coach. It's just saying that I think that for the longest time, everybody in the league, it's just been accepted as gospel that he's by far and away the number one coach in the league. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, what have they really accomplished? And I mean, like in that Nets game, for example, like when they scored the 8 points, like they come out, get the first basket. So I think it was Jaime Jaquez gets a basket. It's 70. They're up by 8. I can't remember what it was at the time, but I think it was like 79-71.
They're up by a solid amount.
Yes. So they're up by 8. There's like 11 and a half minutes left. And they only scored 6 points after that. But like, they come out with like an extremely small lineup. So Bam's not on the floor, Cleo Ware's not on the floor. And so it's like, how are they going? And then, inevitably they get punished in the paint. They can't rebound the ball. And so it's like, to me, I look at that. And by the time that he brings Bam and, them back in the game, like the house is already on fire. It's too late. So I'm like, I don't know, like that doesn't strike me as great decision making. And then you listed out all the games. I mean, I've watched a bunch of their games since we had that conversation, and like especially the Milwaukee game the other night, same kind of thing. It was just kind of like, I don't want to say a meltdown because it wasn't like a 32-8 fourth quarter, but it was still the kind of thing where it's like, I want my coach to design some plays to get some easy looks. And I feel like they've still got good talent on their team, even with trading Jimmy Butler, which when I was talking to you earlier today about it, it's like, I feel like he's got to own some of that too. Because I know it was a contract thing, but I think also one of the final straws was that like Spo wanted to bring him off the bench or something like that when he was coming back, a few weeks before.
No, I think there was some psychology behind that too, also to do that just to kind of piss him off so they can find a way to get rid of him. And there's some psychology behind that, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, true. Yeah, maybe, and maybe that's 100% right, and I'm wrong about that. But I mean, I feel like him being able to get the most out of his player, and to my point earlier, like looking at what they've accomplished, like I give them a lot of credit for building up those dead assets, basically. But it's like, outside of Jimmy Butler getting really hot in the playoffs a couple times, like the past couple of years, they've been a play-in team. I feel like their talent is a little above that. If you look at the 1 year, I can't remember if this was the year they went to the finals or if it was the year that they lost in 7 to Boston. But where
what was it?
It's when they won the 2 play-in games to get into the playoffs.
That was the year went to the finals.
Okay, so
the year they lost to Boston in 7 games, they were the number 1 seed actually that year.
Yeah. So I mean, like they had to win a game against Chicago where they were losing with like 2.5, 3 minutes left in the game.
Correct.
And Tyler Hero hit a couple shots. I know Hero wound up getting hurt that year, I believe. If I'm recalling correctly.
They're in the playoffs, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like if Zach LaVine hits a shot or two at the other end, or if Hero doesn't make 1 or 2 of those shots, like they don't even make the playoffs. So I mean, like I'm just looking at like why were they in a situation to where and again, his brilliance is that.
Listen, it's frustrating as a Heat fan. Trust me, it's frustrating to see this team to play on playing team.
Yeah. So I mean, like when they're in the playoffs, like they're the hardest out ever because he is such a good coach. But it's like, why can't he get more out of them over an 82 game season for like an extended period of time?
Yeah, it makes.
So again, I'm not saying that he's the 18th best coach in the league. I'm still saying he's a top 5 coach. I'm just saying that I feel like we all take it as gospel that he's the best. Do we need to re-examine that?
I mean, this year maybe a little bit, but I think this year we'll see how the year plays out. Maybe this team gets better, plays better at the end of the year. But right now, it doesn't look that good. If we're getting under 500, and right now, but another play-in situation like the last couple of years has been, it is frustrating as a Heat fan to see that. Do I think it's overrated? No, I won't go that far. But I see your argument, though. I do see the argument, though, because I think at the end of the day, when Spurs had the best of the best, creme de la creme, he won big with them. Same reason why we praise Phil Jackson for, well, he had Jordan and Kobe and Shaq and Pippen, and you gave Spo similar pieces, and he won big with those guys. And you can argue still to this day, and most people actually agree with me on this one, that LeBron James' best and most productive years as a player was in Miami to this day.
True, but he was also in his like absolute prime in that.
Right, but he also no, I agreed. But what I say to also to that is that he was his prime. Spoelstra utilized him in ways that no other coach has ever had. Like Spoelstra utilized him in a more efficient way, whereas LeBron was shooting damn near 60% from the field every year because less shots and more efficient basketball. He forced LeBron to play power forward, to play closer to the basket, and to play more efficient. Something LeBron didn't want to do. But it was good for him because it helped him win. So Spo at least was able to push stars in ways that we look at some of the top coaches in the league ever played this coach's game has done, like Phil Jackson and Popovich and Auerbach and those guys. Spo has those same kind of attributes. So like Riley. So I do credit Spo for that. Now I will give you credit for this one. This year, I mean, outside the Butler stuff, you have an argument that maybe we have to come back to earth a little bit with Spoelstra, but I don't know if I go forward the whole overrated thing, and maybe it's just I'm a little more protective. But
I mean, again,
I heart Heat fan here,
I've always been a big fan of his to the point where, like, for years I thought that he was underrated, and it's just in anything else where it's like I feel like when you're underrated for so long that you then become overrated because everyone is always talking you up. And so I don't know. I've just been watching a lot more of them, and then I'm like, the last 2 years, like I feel like they've underachieved like by a lot. Like even now, like if you tell me you have 2 all-stars in Hero and Bam, like Bam not an all-star this year, but just he's an all-star level player, and then you add Wiggins, it's like they shouldn't be struggling to beat pretty much every team that they've played since they've made the trade.
Right. Well, I guess we're gonna revisit this topic again if they continue to melt down in March and April. So anyway, follow Greg on Twitter at Gee Hrinya. That's HRYIN. Well, no, HRINYA. Right. I did it backwards. What's wrong with me? It's getting late, brother. It's getting late.
That's okay. It's a hard last name. I won't blame that.
Greg Hrinya. It's easy. Yeah. He'll be with us every week on the podcast. We'll talk NBA every week. Probably on Tuesdays. We'll see what happens. But at least once a week from now to the end of the season, maybe through the playoffs. We'll see what happens there. But of course, you follow me there on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, of course, at EJ Christian 7. And to YouTube page, youtube.com/Earnest Christian. And until the next episode, we will talk to you guys soon.